What is petcoke? And exactly how much is it contributing to the smog that we are breathing into our lungs these days?
Thank you, Tianwei. This is a difficult question, but in general and in short words, petcoke is the bottom of the barrel product. It's a byproduct of the refinery process, which means when we use the crude oils to produce all those oil products, the last thing come out of the refinery is petcoke. So in that way, it's actually quite highly dense in terms of carbon and also other pollutants and heavy chemicals. And it is used mostly in two ways. The high quality petcoke, which is low sulfur in terms of content, can be used for the manufacturing of metals such as steels and aluminums, and they are very important feedstock. And in this process, it's not supposed to be burned, so it stayed there in theory. And another one is high sulfur petcoke, and generally lower qualities, that could be used as a cheap fuels to be burned in the industries.
Okay,
this is something
I understand what you're saying. It seems that you're suggesting it could be a problem.
It could be a problem.
But how big a problem is it? How is it compared to the other sources that we have been talking about throughout the years?
To be frank, I think this problem, we do not have a clear answer how serious it is.
We still don't.
Yes, we still don't. I published this paper about 18 months ago, and that has already raised some of the eyebrows, and also even I got calls from the Ministry of Environment Protection. They are also looking into this, but still connecting the data, get the statistics of the consumptions, and also track the source of the petcoke is so difficult. So far, we do not have the source
Tracking
yet.
the source, is it imported or is it homely produced? That is a very crucial question.
Exactly. This is a myth that we usually saw in the
myth,
internet.
you say.
Exactly. We talk a lot about the import of the U.S. petcoke, but in fact, we only use about 20% of that from the import. The majority of that we consume is from within our own country. U.S. is the world's largest refinery. That's why they produce most of the petcoke. But we are the world's second largest refinery capacity. We also produce a lot, and we also combust them in some of the sources.
But Mr. Wang, I understand that even on some auction platforms online, petcoke is being sold and bought. How much do we know really is there? How much is it really compared to the coal that we have been talking about?
This is the difficult part.
Another difficult part still?
This is quite difficult. Let me explain this in details to you. What we called earlier, the low sulfur petcoke, supposed not to be burned. And this is used for the production of the steels and aluminums. But because of the industry expands so quickly, we cannot find enough low sulfur petcoke to feed the demand.
Right.
So the industry started using the high sulfur petcoke. And then actually you increase the replacement of this petcoke, and then they were actually being replaced and still as a petcoke. That's why also what you just mentioned, we found in some of these B2B platforms such as Alibaba, people could buy those wasted anode, which is used petcoke, as the cheap fuels. Then we do not have source who is using them and where to go. But in general, that's about 30 million tons. So it's not quite comparable, for example, like coal, that 4 billions in China.
One is billion, one is trillion.
Or 30 million versus 4 trillion.
But yet, you don't know exactly how much power in terms of producing the smog the petcoke could have.
That's true, but in fact, each ton of the petcoke contains a few times higher of sulfur in the content. And if it's unabated, it actually could introduce pollutions many times, 10 times even higher
Mr.
than
Wang,
the coal.
We could go on like this because you did a very extensive paper. That's why we invite you to talk about this specifically. But there are other causes of smog. For example, what about burning coal? Should we still have a coal power plant in the future? What would you say?
Well, coal power plant is certainly needed. Coal is still the king of our energy, and I think we are gradually reducing the reliance on the coal, which means the share of the coal in our energy mix is gradually reducing. But we still, by today, about 60% of our total energy demand is fed by coal. So we cannot just overnight turn them away.
Means we have to overnight still breathe the smog, you're saying?
No, not exactly, because coal is dirty, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have the emissions. What we really need to focus, I think we will discuss later in more details, is how you ensure the emissions meet the standards, how you ensure that the regulations you published by the ministries will be enforced.
Okay, the technologies are there, you say.
Exactly. Yeah.
And also the enforcement should be there.
They should be there.
We're going to talk about a little bit later about that. But another thing, what about people's cars? Should people still have cars? in the cities if they want to avoid smog. Some were using that method to ban certain cars and vehicles at certain time to avoid and prevent smog from spreading, but it didn't work, it seems. What would you say?
It is a difficult question because in the developed countries, we have seen people starting using less and less cars and bought less and less cars. But it's immature for us to ask Chinese consumers to stop buying cars and stop using cars. But I think when we look at the issue of transportations, we have also looked at two issues. First one is the passenger cars, which is most people looking for and to buy. And that where matters is the number. For example, Beijing has 6 million cars in the cities, and the congestions and the high emissions from each of those 6 million cars is very high. But there are also large emissions coming from very dirty, heavy-duty lorries, the trucks, which deliver all those goods that we consume as citizens in Beijing. Those trucks are hundreds times, for example, dirtier than passenger cars, and we should also address them. And they are actually low-hanging fruit and easier to be targeted.
Let me ask you a conclusive question for this part. Dr. Wang, do we know at this point, after saying all of these, what are the real causes of smog? Do you think we have done enough at all about eradicating the root causes of smog? Give me a simple and definite answer.
I think we do not know what is the economic cost of abating smogs because we haven't done enough. And we do not know the cost of not abating smogs because the potential health cost is yet to be seen. But I think this is still a battle that we have to spend many, many more years to complete.